from slope from a pair of points. Now, some of the issue I think that happened is your points were really close together. And when I saw, and I'm not quite sure if it's integer issues or if your points were so close together, you got your X's and your Y's turned around. I don't know. So what I'm going to do is go to this piece of paper and I'm going to write negative 15, 7. I'm going to come all the way over here and write negative 10 and 6 so that I have plenty of room between my points. Okay? Because I don't know if it's getting scrunched up and X's look like Y's a lot of time if you're not careful. Remember that your formula was slope is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now I'm gonna name them, but I'm gonna be kind of more careful how I do this because I think that we got turned around with X's and Y's. So since the formula says you're going to take your 2's first, how many of you want to make your first pair the 2's? Would that be helpful? Because then you're going from your first pair to your second pair instead of your second pair back to your first pair. How many think going from your first pair to your second pair is easier? I need to know. It's a strategy I can teach. It doesn't matter which way you go as long as you do your X and your Y together. So I need to know, which way do you want me to teach it? The original way? I got one saying yes for the original way. Everybody else doesn't care? Okay, so I'm going to go with the way we teach it in class. This is x1, y1, and I would make sure that I am clear. I would try and write a little bit bigger if you are one of those who writes really squiggly, okay? I've got x2, y2. So I need my y2, and what I'm going to do before I even start, and I think that this helped John yesterday, am I correct? I'm going to do this. In other words, I'm going to put my subtract sign and my line that goes between them already down before I even be placing numbers. Then I don't get confused. Is it a subtract, a negative, a this, or that? I've already got it ready. So y2 is 6, y1 is 7. Then x2 is negative 10, and x1 is negative 15. So I'm just plotting in my numbers. Okay, 6 take away 7 is how much? Negative 1. Then I've got negative 10, subtract a negative 15. What's the rule here?
You're going to not
I'm going to not subtract, so I'm going to change the sign, change the middle, right? Not. Okay, so I'm making this into a positive, so I may even do this so that I remember that, okay? So now I have a positive 15 and a negative 10. What's the rule for different signs? Take the larger number, so ignore the signs. Take the larger number, subtract the smaller number. 15 minus 10 is what? 5, and keep the sign of the larger number, which is 15. Okay, so negative 1 over 5, can that be simplified and left as a fraction? No, it's as simplified as it would be. So my slope is negative 1 over 5. It doesn't matter where I put the sign as long as it's there. Alrighty, let's do the next one. So I'm going to write my points out kind of separated, negative 13 and 8, and 21 and 8, and I'm going to go ahead and write my formula down. I've got subtract, align, subtract, so that I'm ready to go. I've got x1, y1, x2, y2. 2. So you see I'm using lots of space, keeping things straight. I'm going to do y2, which is 8, plug my number in, y1, which is 8. I've got x2, which is 21, and I've got x1, which is negative 13. Here we go. 8 take away 8 is what? 0. Okay. 21, I guess you didn't need a calculator, did you? 21 take away a negative 13, what's the rule? Not, so plus, and I get 21 plus 13, which is what? 34. Now, since none of you know this, let's take and go to our calculator, because I don't know if you've been taught this as a rule or not. If you have 0 divided by anything, but we're going to use 34, what do you get for an answer? 0. Okay? Now, if it was the other way around and I had 34 divided by 0, what do you think you get? Nothing. You get an error message because it's undefined. Okay? It is not possible. It's called undefined. All right? When you have an undefined slope, what did I tell you? What kind of slope was that? Undefined slope. Okay, I'm going to turn my paper over. You guys don't, but okay. Undefined slope. You have 2 slopes that you have to know about. One is called 0, and one is undefined. Okay? A 0 slope will be a slope, and so since we got 0, didn't we? Over here, didn't we get 0 when we simplified that? Okay, so our slope on number 2 is m equals 0. Okay, when you have a 0 slope, it means that you have a line that is going horizontal. Your line is horizontal. Okay, it can be anywhere. It could be on the x-axis, it can be up here, it can be down here, but your line has a 0 slope. And the way I remember that, I know I talked about this, is because of that O in horizontal is 0. Okay, so that's what reminds me that it is horizontal, is a 0 slope. Okay. Undefined, and you will get answers where you have an undefined slope, all right, is when you have a vertical line, and it can be anywhere on your axis, all right. So here your slope is undefined, and that will happen when your line is vertical. And you will have a situation where you are dividing something by 0. Some number by 0 when you're finding your slope will give you an undefined slope. And that means that you just have a straight vertical line. Okay? Good? Just so you know what those words mean. Okay? All right, so the second one was a horizontal line because our slope was 0. Let's go to the next one. All right, I've got -3, -2, and over here I've got 1 and 4. Probably didn't leave enough space, but I'm going to go ahead. x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to set up my problem down here. Okay, and now it's just a matter of plugging in numbers. 4 for x, y2, y1 is -2, x2 is 1, x1 is -3, and I get 4 double negative, which means change the sign, change the middle. So that turns that to a positive. 4 plus 2 is 6. This changes this one, and I get 1 plus 3, which is 4. Now, you do not simplify this by giving me 1.5. Okay? You simplify this by 2 goes into 6 how many times? 3. And 2 goes into 4 how many times? 2. I cannot count 1.5. I can count rise over run with 2 and 3. Okay? My rise is 3, my run is 2. All right? So you want to simplify it. And so that would be my answer. So here m is equal to 3 over 2. Now what happens, because I had this question asked, what happens, and I'm just going to go over here and write note, because this isn't correct for anything that we're doing right now. But if I had a -6 over a -4, what does that give me? Doesn't that change it to a positive 6 over 4? Okay, so then I would do 6 over 4 positive, which would simplify to 3 over 2. Okay, all right, just a reminder. That's just a reminder about what to do when you get both of them are negative. So m is equal to 3 over 2. We already did it. All right, I want you to try the next one on your own. Okay? All by your lonesome self on your paper and see what you get. You're still lost. Are you still lost? Did you do it? Never mind. Yes. Okay. I think for some of you, if you go back and look, you might see that you were doing your X's with your Y's, and I think that's more of the issue than the integer issue, but I may be wrong. Kind of what I noticed up front. Has this kind of clarified maybe where some of you were not so clear? I don't know. You guys are too quiet. Okay. Let's do one more. Well, let's go to tables. How about that? Because it's basically the same thing. If you need another piece of paper, go get another piece of paper, okay? I write really big, so I need a new piece of paper. All right, tables. It's the same thing, as what we were doing right now. It's just now you're in a table. So if it's hard for you to work within a table, then pull it out just like we did. You have a coordinate pair of 1 and 4, and you have a coordinate pair of 2 and 4. You can use any two. I always say use 2 in the middle. I think most teachers will tell you to use 2 in the middle. This is not the cheater way to do this. I will show you on the second one the cheater way to do this. But this is the same as 2 points. And so if I set my problem up, I've got x1, y1, x2, y2, and I've got 4, take away 4, over 2, take away 1. I'm going to end up with 0 over 1, which is going to give me what kind of slope?
0.
A 0 slope. What kind of line is that? Horizontal line. So I've got a 0 slope. My y-intercept is where x is 0. So let's write ourselves a note right here. Y-intercept is always where x equals 0. So in a table, if you have a place where x is 0, it's really easy to see that my y-intercept for this table is 4. And some of you had problems when the 0 wasn't there getting back to it, okay? So let's look at this second one and see if we can identify the y-intercept. I'm gonna do the cheater way to find my slope. Okay? And what why I say cheater way is this. The change in y over the change in x. Essentially, when we are subtracting 2 coordinate points, the y values, we're finding the change in those y values. And when we're subtracting the x values, we're finding the change in the x values of those points. Do you get that? All right. So if I do the change in y, this is my 1 and this is my 2, my y1 and y2, I do -10 take away -6. Now, if you don't have that here, please, for now, because you guys are not as swift with integers maybe, write it down, -10 minus a -6. Well, isn't that the same thing as writing down y2 minus y1? Okay. But what I've done here is, in my head, I can do -10 minus a -6. My 6 is going to turn positive, and I have the difference of two integers. 10 minus 6 is 4, and I'm going to keep the sign of the larger. All right? We want to get you to that sophistication so that you can do that. But for now, write it down. Okay? Use your formula. Take the time to do it. So I would just put -4 on this side. Okay? Cheater way. I know. All right, then I'd do my x's, 1 and 2. But see, I know, and then you could do 5 minus 3. All right, so I got -4 and 5 minus 3. I know that 5 minus 3, the change in this is 2. Okay? So now I could put it as the change in x over the change in y, which is -4 over 2, which is simplified to -2, essentially over 1, correct? Okay, I don't have to indicate the 1. I'm lazy, so I'm just going to write -2 over here. But I know that as my y's change by my y's are going down by 4, my x's are going here. Do you see how they're changing? So I need to figure out, how do I get to 0? Well, I look here. This is where my 0 should be, shouldn't it? Okay. If you notice, it's 2 over 1. So every 1 change of my x's, my y's are going up by 2. If you notice, they're going up, aren't they? because it's a subtract negative, it's changing it. So if I'm going down by 1, if I was to insert a 2 right here, okay, and I'm going to get that zeroed in so you can see what I'm doing. All right. If I was to insert a 2 right here, that means that I've changed from 3, I've gone down 1, which is right here, what this is telling me to do, okay? So then I need to go up by 2. This would be -4, wouldn't it? Do you see that? Okay. So then I've got, here I changed by 1, and I'm changing by going up by 2. Because when you're going less negative, you're actually changing the value positively, okay? So here, I'm going to go down. To get to 0, I would go down by 1. What would be here? 0. So my y-intercept is what? 0. I'm at the origin, 0, 0. Okay? And that is a skill that takes time to get to, and unfortunately, you have a very small time to get there. That is an 8th grade skill, but it's really more emphasized in algebra. You might see one problem like that on an 8th grade star, but most of the time, the 8th grade star would give you 0 for x, and you would be able to find it. But we teach it in 8th grade. But algebra, it would be probably the 0 wouldn't be there. Okay, so, but we'll get there. We're going to practice this. We're practicing this as 8th graders, and then we will have an opportunity to also revisit it as algebra students. Okay? All right, flip the page. Where we messed up on these was not looking at our intervals. And intervals are what is your y-axis going by and what is your x-axis going by. Those are intervals, all right? And when I teach graphs in 8th grade, they should be doing it in other grades, you need to look at this. This is one of the first things you look at. And what are your intervals going by here? And I make everybody write 5s, okay? Then what are your intervals going down here by? 1s, okay? Then, do I have a negative or positive slope? Negative. The line is going down from left to right. So now I'm ready to count my slope. Before, I wasn't, okay? So I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to use this just because it's convenient. And I'm going to go up to over here, and I'm going to count. But now I have to remember to count by what? So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. And here I'm counting by 1s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I have 35 over 5, which gives me actually a -7 over 1. Okay? And my y-intercept, you guys didn't have problems seeing that. Okay? Let's do one more together. Look at down here. What are your intervals going by on the y-axis? 10s, so write it down. What are your intervals going on the x? 1s, because look at every line is going to count for 1, isn't it? Even though they're writing it by 2s. And your x-axis is not always going to go by 1s, though, but you have to be careful. Sometimes it goes by halves, all right? And you'll need to write those in or give yourself a hint so that you will remember to count like that. They don't always hit here at the y-intercept, so you can't always do this. And I'm sure that somebody taught you to do that in 7th grade, did they not? Okay, so you need to be, they won't always hit here. Sometimes the line doesn't start until here, and you've got to count from here to here. So you've got to be prepared to be able to count correctly. So I've got 10, 20 over here, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 over here, and my slope is positive. That should have been the second question. 20 over 4 is equal to 5, and yes, my y-intercept is 20. Okay? So, with that being